Thank you very much. This was incredibly hard talk to write, actually, and I sort of did the very unwise thing of I rewrote it on the train up at about 7 o'clock, and you're meant to take slides out because you've only got 90 minutes, 52 seconds. But I put slides in just because there's so much moving on in this line of work that I wanted to try and cover it all. So our lab, it's actually been about 19 years, it's our 20th year next year. 24 postdocs, 2 profs, 1 reader, that's me. Urban modelling, resilience, Internet of Things, sensors, GIS, a little bit of BIM, quantified self now, transport flows, network type work, and 3 master's courses to try and train the youth in all of the things that we do. And we've been around for 20 years. I think it's literally in the last 5 years that people have actually really sort of noticed what we do. I think it's because we're on a shift of how we view places and how we understand places with all of these live feeds which are beginning to come in. And that term that you either love or hate, smart, it's not in terms of a smart fridge, but in terms of the way we used to use hard drives. And I think we're not there yet, we're about 5-10 years off, but we are moving towards more of a real-time view. And this is sort of what this talk sort of focuses on. The quote that I put in all of my research papers, which is, I think, a IBM marketing quote, I don't think it's actually true. But it just makes the point, there's lots of these sensors out there, lots of these data, and they're all putting these live feeds. And increasingly, they're geo-located. So we have the chance, from a location point of view, to join up the Internet of Things world, the urban modelling world, the BIM world, the GIS world, all of which don't talk and probably overcomplicate things. If you can just begin to join these things up, then you make places possibly smart. So sort of view the urban realm a little bit like the web was in 1994. There's feeds coming out there, but they're not joined up yet. So we're using the urban realm as a lab. And if we can begin to get these live feeds out there and join them up, then we can make sense of how the urban realm works. This was our first piece of work. This is a couple of years old now, but this was gathering all of the live London feeds that we could find and just put them on a single site. Now, our lab is very map-based, but the map doesn't work. It's almost the first pieces of work here where the map just confuses things. So we're interested in new ways to represent feeds, to communicate it to the public at large and to the London Mayor, because then you get the work used. So we made the London Mayor an iPad wall. New York has this fancy system. Rio has the complete wall system. London didn't have much cash, so we built him an iPad wall. But the wall, it actually had a hard-coded plugin for our lab, actually just pulls up these live feeds, but they're color-coded feeds. You know, green is good, red is bad. But we archive all of these feeds now, and it's about taking the work that a lab does, putting it into the policymakers' hands, putting it into the public's hands too. So we used to throw all of these live feeds out. So we used to show them, but we weren't archiving them. Now we archive them. And the challenge is to link that to the new urban modelling work. So we put the live feeds into the urban modelling work so we can say what the next 5 minutes of a city's life will be, what the next half hour will be, which is challenging. But you can get Oyster card dumps now, and you can begin to see where the urban flows come from and where cities' paths are. So the pulse work, how the city wakes up, how it lives, how it breathes. This is the latest output of our master's course. And we sort of teach them how to do urban viz, how to do the code, and how to communicate it, and how to get it out there. But of course, we're increasingly being tracked and tagged. So every time we rent a bike, that is logged. There are API feeds out there that we can grab, and we can put them on a web, and we can begin to get these feeds, which are not only in our lab, but are online, so they're all shared too. And it's not just the live feeds, though. All of the transport timetable data is out there, and you can just suck that in. So you can have a view of every tube, every train, every boat, and you can begin to sort of communicate it. And I think this new communication techniques is possibly key to why people have sort of opened their eyes in the last 4 or 5 years to our work. But it's this sort of stuff that 8, 10 years ago was really hard work. So it's only recently that labs like us can begin to put this sort of output out there. But I don't want it to be, you have to be a computer scientist, you have to know how the APIs work. So we're putting toolkits out there as well. So social scientists like arguably myself can actually do this work. So this is launching in probably about 6 weeks' time. And it allows you to grab your own feeds, to grab your own social network feeds. And it allows you to do work like this, which is a Twitter weekend. This is about 3 years old now. Now lots of labs do Twitter feeds from a location point of view. But we made this movie because A, it just makes the point that everything you do, you click yes to those terms and people can grab it. But the fact that they're geolocated too. So this runs into Heathrow Runway 1, where you're meant to have your phone turned off due to health and safety laws. And all these tweets pop up. But whatever we do can be grabbed, and we can mine the location, we can mine sentiment and mood out of these tweets. And privacy, as was raised, is a big point. I only leave this in because it raises the privacy bit. This goes into someone's garden shed. There's a guy behind his shed and he tweets, "Happy birthday, how are you, kiss." Now, if I'm going to tweet my wife or my girlfriend, "Happy birthday," I'd always do it from the back of my shed. So people don't realise that we're increasingly being tagged and tracked. But it allows us to open up whole new worlds. This is London's Twitter map. Soho Mountain is London's Twitter peak. This is where we tweet from the most. We tweet from transport hubs too. Now there's no wonderful insights here. We sort of knew this, but it's the fact that we can mine it, we can grab it, we can map it in increasingly real time that changes the way we view the places around us. Here you can link it to architecture too. So you can pull the tweets in, you can link it to the Ordnance Survey master map, and you can pull things up over time. So we know what architecture tweets more. And there's some grants that you write that almost you think, oh, that would be great. And then you think, oh, no, probably shouldn't do that. But then it comes in. One of them, I have a thing about drones currently. I'm not allowed to fly drones around our lab. But in Lima, you are. So we wrote a grant to fly drones from a participation planning point of view. My PhD was in putting the planning system into the public's hands. And wouldn't it be great to put drones into the public's hands from a Lima point of view? So we went out there, we gave the public a drone and allowed them to actually map the water supplies, the parcels of land in sort of almost near real time. And they flew this drone and it allowed them to get this 3D mesh. So you're suddenly moving the 3D GIS work out of the big companies' hands into the people who live in the shanty towns, perhaps, to actually understand who owns those parcels of land. Then once that's made, we then do the normal 1970s planning for real stuff. And that works. Post-it notes, Sharpies, that works. But this is with a high-res aerial photograph that they captured that same day. And therefore, that sort of brings them in. And it begins to get the spatial capture into the public's hands. And of course, just to take that one step further, you've got a 3D system. So you can close all the holes in the mesh. You can put it on the replicator too. And you can do your planning for real from a 3D printed point of view. So whereas the 1970s was cardboard boxes, we moved towards drones and the printed plastic type viewpoints. But we're interested in new feeds, new forms of information about the places that we live in. We sort of build the world around us. We never ask about how it makes us feel. So we're using these portable brainwave headsets, which give you a raw feed of your brain as you walk around town. I'm interested in that because I'm not a big questionnaire fan. Lots of social science is very questionnaire based. I have the attention span of a goldfish. If I can get a raw feed out of your brain, then maybe that's more interesting of the places that we build, the places that we live. And we're walking partially sighted people around town to try and improve their quality of life. So we're walking them around town first to map their route from a brain output point of view, and then we're wiring that route up with low power Bluetooth headsets so the route talks to try and improve their route around town. But it produces these sorts of outputs. So this is a raw map of the output from the brain walking around town. And you can see the red bit is a noisy Tottenham Court Road. But if you go to the left, this is Charlotte Street, this is blue, this is coffee, this is lunch. The brain calms down, the brain likes it there. If you walk around Oxford Street, you can almost see which shops light up the brain. So I think we're trying to, and this is very young work, we're trying to understand what actually creates place. Why do certain places feel a certain way? And as part of the lab, I always like a slight side grant, which is not what we do. The current one is SEED, which is trying to communicate empathy online. And the pitch was, I was asked to pitch for whatever I wanted that they don't think the research councils would fund. So I pitched to build the Void Kampf machine out of the film Blade Runner. And they said yes, and that runs for the next 18 months, to try and get these real-time quantified self-type feeds. So you've got all of these sensors. You can get real-time heartbeats. You can point webcams at yourself now, which will pick up your pulse from your vein here. So you can sit someone down and you can see whether they're liking the work or whether they're compelled or whether they're arguably lying. And then we thought, wouldn't this be great in the church to try and put empathy into the church? There's prayer groups, but they read out lists of names, but they're just names. They don't really have that link. So we sort of did a cheeky pitch to the church, and the church kindly said yes. And this launches in about 3 weeks' time. We're putting network candles in the church, of which there will be 4 for those from the 1970s who picked up that link. There will be 4 of them. And these are networks, so you can light them from home, you can type in your thoughts, a candle lights in the church, you can upload a photograph you want to be prayed for, and that appears behind them. You could also contribute £1 via PayPal to the church, who's currently resting in my own PayPal bank account. But there's ways to communicate these new feeds out there. And it's basically Internet of Things work. So everything is increasingly becoming wired. And classrooms, we've been bouncing into classrooms over the last 6 months. So you're getting all of these feeds, all of these data. But classrooms are a unique place to put it all, because it turns out there's an awful lot of them. You can put your weather feeds on every classroom roof, and you get quite a close mesh network. So the classroom learns about how the Internet of Things works. We get these live feeds. And we're working with Oxfam too, to try and sort of wire up recycle bins to encourage people to think about the things that they drop off. And everything here is geolocated and bounces out a live feed. But it's how you communicate it too. This is my desk at work. Augmented reality. It's not quite there yet, but it's not far off. And it allows you to sort of take the printed map, which is fantastic. There's something about feeling stuff. We're trying to move away from the screen and back into the place. But once you click print on the map, that's fixed. But if you get a tablet, you can move your tablet over and you can put your BIM, your GIS, your urban feeds, your transport network in here, and it makes it live. in a slight Harry Potter type way. But it's not quite ready for the mass market yet, but we are getting there. And I think that changes the way we view reports. I'm a great believer that people don't really read reports nowadays. But if you can put augmented reality in here and you can make the maps live, then you can communicate the feeds. And Pigeon Sim, made by our colleague here, George. Different ways. This has got into classrooms too. This is fun. There's no harm in having fun in this line of work too. You put your arms out, pigeon appears on your head, and you fly around town. But you're flying around these real-time feeds, and you put these into classrooms. So all the work's the same, but you're putting it into the policymakers and the public's hands a little bit more. So therefore they know what you're actually talking about from a research point of view. And then the Oculus Rift appeared on my desk 6 months ago, and it hits the shops, I don't know, in about 6 months' time. And this is going to change the world completely, because this ports you to a completely different world. And we, as a lab, we build worlds. We teach them on the MRes course how to build virtual worlds. Our first complete public outreach view of this, there's a left-right view, is we built an urban roller coaster where you hop on, there's the left and right view, so there's actually a 3D view when you have the headset on. And you can take an urban coaster ride around a currently made up urban scene, but we've got funding from October the 1st to rebuild a real-time virtual London. And we will put this around town. The question is where the hell's the research? I'm aware. I know that. But sometimes the public outreach, the communication, that underpins the whole research world. Now we can get this done, this is relatively quick work, and then we can actually get on with the proper research behind these scenes. And there's other systems. We have a sand table from a company called Redfish at our lab, and this is a fire sim. So if you light a lighter, the flame burns, and you can burn towns, and you can change the wind direction. There's a whole urban sim system behind the scenes. So it's taking the urban simulation, the micro simulation, the agent-based modeling, and trying to put it into the public realm in a way you can gather around with a coffee or a glass of wine, and how to communicate that and therefore hopefully have it used. And that allowed us to be part of the Smilelund Plan. So we helped write the plan. And all of the research is in there, but we only arguably got in there because we've done the public outreach, we've done the knocking on doors, we've done the policymaker, the mayor has flown Pigeon Sim during the 2012 games. And therefore it sort of gets the lab out there and it gets the lab known. So I think location, to draw it back, is the key thing to join GIS, BIM, the Internet of Things. Lots of these feeds are locationally tagged now. You can simplify it. It doesn't have to be as complicated as it currently is. And the quantified self is currently, it's a big thing. Apple's eHealth app has just been launched. There'll be new hardware about to come out. I will have a real-time feed of my heartbeat soon via these wristwears you can buy. And that's fantastic from a citizen point of view, because we know how healthy places are. So I think we're moving towards a new science of self. If I've got a real-time feed, I will care about myself a little bit more. And that goes into the real-time urban planning and how cities work and how we view them. So I think central to this is how data is communicated, visualized, and used. And you need to get it out there, and you need to get the policymakers to sort of walk out the room and say, wow, whenever you show your work. But there's also a need to train the youth, the next phase of us. So we've launches October the 1st, the UK's first Smart Cities course. Challenging to get through the academic boards, these sorts of terms, but we have. But it's a very young line of work, but we want to train people so they're ready to go into the Mayor's office, the Ordnance Survey, the Arups, the Atkins of this world, knowing how to write code, knowing how to join it all up. And that's where I leave it. Thank you very much.